Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney just said in very clear terms inside Parliament, quote, Canada will never participate in an Iran offensive with the United States. Canada will never participate in an Iran offensive, period. This is a very important statement from Prime Minister Carney. He was rightfully getting a lot of criticism for his statements right after the United States invaded Iran, where Prime Minister Carney suggested that he was potentially supportive of the United States' unlawful war. I know a lot of Meidas Mighty, a lot of the Meidas Mighty in Canada were kind of upset at Prime Minister Carney, and they were saying, where was the Carney we saw at Davos powerfully, strongly take command within the international community and call out Donald Trump and his despicable regime? Well, it just happened, fortunately, where Prime Minister Carney was getting criticized also for not speaking with the parliament. And he went in there, he took some questions, he actually answered it in French, and he says, Canada's stance is clear. He says, Canada is not participating in the United States and the Israeli offensive, and we will never participate in it. At the same time, Canada has announced that it is committing nearly $1 billion to drone and airport and airborne defense research. The government says that the research aims to benefit both military and civilian operations. We now know that when President Zelensky of Ukraine was speaking with Donald Trump back in August, at the same time Donald Trump was meeting with Putin in Alaska and rolling out the red carpet for Putin, Zelensky was trying to prevail upon Donald Trump and the Trump regime. You need anti-drone technology. The Ukrainians have developed this. The Ukrainians have developed drone technology. And where you have these THAAD systems that are billions and billions of dollars and Patriot systems that are billions of dollars, and then the missiles that they shoot are tens of millions of dollars, and you're dealing with Iranian Shahid drones that Zelensky saw strike Ukrainian buildings and civilians and kill people en masse there. Those drones only cost $20,000, in some cases less, to build. So you're shooting millions of dollars worth of missiles at $20,000 drones. That becomes an unsustainable model. But Donald Trump was so enamored with Putin, as he still is today, calling Putin, getting advice from Putin about his unlawful war in Iran, while Putin plays Donald Trump and then brags about it to Kremlin state regime media. Donald Trump refused to listen to Zelensky. The whole situation regarding warfare in 2026 has changed dramatically, as we see in the front lines of Ukraine, and the Trump regime had never addressed that when they went into this unlawful war. But Canada is dealing with it right now. Over in Canada as well, all our Canadian viewers know this, but the Walrus, very popular over there. It's kind of like our Atlantic here in the United States. You have Patrick Lennox, great writer over there. Here's the article that he just penned. Canada is already at war with the U.S. We just don't know it yet. Hat tip to Patrick. And he goes, the so-called Don Road doctrine. It's a long piece, by the way. You should read it all. Let me just give you some of the cliff notes. He goes, the so-called Don Road doctrine that has come to encapsulate the U.S. national security strategy has Canada squarely in its sights. It articulates a form of resource imperialism as its central ordering principle, which entitles the Trump administration to seize assets across the hemisphere at will. The stunning U.S. takeover of Venezuela should have been a very clear warning shot to every country in the hemisphere. The rules-based international order, according to its 2026 defense strategy, nothing more than a cloud castle abstraction. No one is safe. Canada, like all of the rest of the resource-rich nations in what the U.S. now considers its own backyard, is looked upon as real estate to be acquired. And then he goes on to talk about how on the day-to-day management of the Canada-U.S. relationship, Trump has shown a willingness to create a form of chaos designed to disorient and rewire our perceptions of normalcy. Cases in point are his threats to decertify Canadian airplanes and block the opening of the Gordie Howe Bridge until the United States is fully compensated for everything we have given them. And also importantly, Canada treats the United States with the fairness and respect we deserve. He also threatened to scrap the Canada-US-Mexico agreement, a trade deal that he was the person who helped negotiate. And it goes on to say that there is basically a Cold War that exists right now. And if Canadians don't recognize it and don't stay united, there could be big issues. And just look at what Pete Hegseth has been saying just over the past few days during this unlawful invasion by the United States of Iran. Hegseth, during his press conference, talked about the United States drawing a new strategic map from Greenland to the Gulf of America called the Greater Map of North America, which is the U.S. plan to conquer all of that territory. This is what he just said. Here, play this clip.
That is why President Trump has drawn a new strategic map from Greenland to the Gulf of America to the Panama Canal and its surrounding countries. At the Department of War, we call this strategic map the Greater North America. Why? Because every sovereign nation and territory north of the equator, from Greenland to Ecuador and from Alaska to Guyana, is not part of the global South. It is a security perimeter in this great neighborhood that we all live in. Each one of these countries border either the North Atlantic or the North Pacific. Each one of these countries sits north of the two basic geographic barriers that exist in this region, the Amazon and the Andes Mountains. This is basic geography.
I want to bring in Charlie Angus from Meidas Canada right now. Charlie, it's great to see you.
Yes.
The U.S. and Israel launching this war against Iran. We're seeing the world being drawn into it, or Trump trying to draw the world into it. Carney came out with what I thought was his biggest misstep originally, right when this war was announced by Trump and the war took place, although he just made these statements in Parliament. What do you make of it all, Charlie?
Well, Ben, where to start? I mean, certainly I think Prime Minister Carney was trying to be careful, but it was a misstep of saying he supported the reasons for going in when there was no reason. It was like the weapons of mass destruction argument. But what you saw with Pete Hegseth there, I mean, they're in the middle of this chaotic war. They've created absolute chaos in the Middle East. The world economy is in crisis. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. And yet they take time out to poke Canada, to insult us, to say that they can take us over. And then Donald Trump again today doubles down, calling our prime minister his governor and treating the Great Lakes as though there's no border there. I think what's really clear, Ben, is that they have never lost focus on their attack on Canada. You know, there was a time when we thought, well, maybe if they were preoccupied with, say, Venezuela, or preoccupied even with Iran or with Greenland, they would stop focus. They never stop focus on us. So what we saw very clearly is this ongoing psyops operation, which is very much like Putin. You know, people used to say, well, Trump's being Trump. No, Trump is being Putin, because it's the same strategy that Putin employed leading up to the invasion in 2022 of denigrating the Ukrainian people, denigrating their sovereignty, and denigrating their notion of nationhood. So the message Canadians are hearing, they heard loud and clear. Canadians were waiting for the Prime Minister. There was a lot of concern, but they knew that the Prime Minister would come through on this. So the Prime Minister has now said very clearly, we are not getting involved in any way. Thanks, Donald. Thanks for all your stupid attacks on us. You just lost yet another ally. Because, Ben, I think the issue that certainly us at Meidas Canada were worried about, in about 2 weeks as this thing starts to go super south, they're going to need the navies of Canada, France, the UK, particularly with the Gulf of Hormuz and the chaos there. So they would have needed us. And now they poked us and insulted us. And you think that Canada is going to step up at this time? The Prime Minister will be run out of the country if he agrees in any capacity to do this. So Donald may have done us a favor, but there is no way at this point we want to be anywhere near this chaotic war. And we recognize the real war for us is the war against our nation and our sovereignty, which is why we're investing heavily in drones right now.
Right. You know, when you and I first began talking, right, Ed, in December of 2024, you know, beginning January 2025, lots of people thought your rhetoric, what you warned Trump's intentions were both to Canada and internationally were hyperbolic. I would argue, a label that you probably have never got before, you may have been conservative, Charlie, in what you were predicting, because the reality is it was that spot on. If anything, it's actually been worse. I mean, what he's done and what he's doing with Putin right now, it's disastrous.
Well, Ben, a journalist once said to me, "What if you're wrong?" I said, "My God, wouldn't that be the greatest thing ever? I would be the happiest person on the planet to be wrong about this." But what we're seeing now is that the world is on fire, and we're seeing that more and more destabilization creates the chaos factors that bring the expansion of war just through sheer chaos. And you have lunatics like Pete Hegseth as the front of this. Maybe the only good thing out of this right now is that you see our European allies are really understanding you cannot side with this guy in any capacity. People wanted our prime minister to really rally the vision he had at Davos, and we are. But right now, you see these investments in drones. We're not kidding around. Canada has spent an enormous amount of time in Ukraine, in Latvia. And I want to give a shout out to Corporal Nakaji from Attawapiskat First Nation in my region, who's just come home from being on the front lines in Latvia. You know, we say that we're going over there to train. I think where we're going over there is to learn. So there's a lot of deep thinking going on. And Ben, I was talking to someone who's very high up in the Canadian military who said for the longest time in Canada's military, contracts at bases and in planning and investments, it took years because there was no need to move forward, and bureaucracy and blah, 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 and paperwork. He said that things are moving very quickly right now. When a project needs to get done, it gets done. When a contract needs to get signed, it gets signed. Canada is very much aware of the threat on the border. And that border threat is Donald Trump and Project 2025. And that threat is to our national security and to our sovereignty. So every time Donald comes out and is being Donald, we know what this is. This is ongoing PSYOPs attempt to undermine us and to degrade our right to having our own nation. And I think the only thing I disagree with Patrick Lennox and his excellent article in the Walrus about we don't know it yet is Canadians know it. Ordinary Canadians totally get it. Ordinary Canadians that I talk to on the streets, that I meet on the bus, where I talk to anywhere, they understand the nature of the threat and they are getting prepared.
Yeah, Prime Minister Carney, I think when the war broke out, he was doing that trip where he was in Australia, and he was traveling around. And one of the things that we're seeing get inked quicker as well, not just some of these contracts modernizing the military, focusing on drones, these international trade deals and international alliance. I've compared it to a connect the dots book as a child, where you would connect these dots, but you have to draw around whatever the coloring book had you draw around. In this case, the world are connecting dots around the United States, not to the United States. And so you have the Trans-Pacific partnerships, you have the transatlantic partnerships, and you have Carney kind of working and bringing together the various countries, while Donald Trump is out there praising Pakistan and destroying his relationship with India, while Pakistan then praises the new Ayatollah Mujaba and then undermines Trump policy. Trump will be out there, supporting Putin, while Putin's literally publicly saying that he stands in solidarity with the Ayatollah against the United States. And then Trump will be asked questions like, well, what are you hearing about Putin? And they'll be like, well, we don't know what our intelligence community is. We'll have to wait. I'm like, Putin's saying it. He literally said it out loud that he's out there targeting your troops. Like, how dumb are you? So talk to us about that juxtaposition of like these alliances that are forming and Trump just like, it's dangerous and it's idiotic.
Well, Ben, I think what really concerns me, and I don't know, was it the Doge cuts? Was it just the hammering of all these institutions where, the United States has such enormous capacity for understanding the economies, the politics around the world, but they've been flushing the talent out relentlessly. So they're blind. They've got their lunatics sitting there around Trump. These trade deals, they take years. I mean, I was in Parliament. Trade deals went on forever. And then every little parochial group came out to oppose the trade deal, and then we had to look it over. Trade deals are getting signed super fast. You know, our Prime Minister goes to Australia. They meet. They want to talk. They've got an agreement. He's over in Norway. They meet. They talk. They've got an agreement. It's because the world knows. The world's on fire right now. Democracy is under threat. And we either stick together and we agree to disagree, put all our disagreements to the side and get stuff done, or we're going to get rolled over. So you see a whole new world building. And the victor of this certainly is going to be China. China's already picking up all the pieces on the chessboard. But the other element, of course, is Putin. Putin is playing Trump, and then Putin is also supporting Iran. And Iran, you know, not the nicest country on the planet by anyone's imagination. How could you make Iran not fall when it could have fallen internally if you had just done the right things? Now Iran is making fun of Trump. And the Strait of Hormuz, if they keep that closed, you are going to see absolute economic chaos around the world, and it's going to come home to roost. So all these trade deals that are happening is about trying to build another economic system, about building democracy, while Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu try and stay ahead of the courts. And oh, by the way, yeah, we have more Epstein files about child rape. It's all coming home, but they're burning the house to the ground to keep people distracted. And I think that's the real danger. We cannot allow ourselves as Canadians to be burnt to the ground while Trump burns his country to the ground.
Right. You have Netanyahu running from his prosecutions. You have Trump running from the Epstein files and all of his cover-ups. And they've placed their own personal agendas, you know, ahead of, you know, the rest of the world. And it's resulted in this utter devastation. To your point, had Trump just let the Ayatollah, who was becoming unpopular, just have a little bit of patience. The guy's 86 years old. He was getting deeply unpopular, and Trump just rallied the entire Iranian Shiite community and others even who were against him around the nation. When you start bombing elementary schools and blowing up oil depots and calling the Iranian people menacing, what do you think is going to happen? Before we go, Charlie, your message to all of the Meidas Mighty out there, all the Meidas Mighty in Canada, but more, let's do what we always do to end it though, rather. What's your message to Donald Trump before we go, if he's watching this right now?
Well, Donald Trump, why don't we just stop this? It's coming. We got Prince Andrew. It took us 600 years to take a prince down. We took a prince down. The latest allegations, Donald, it fits a pattern. So you think you can burn the world to the ground to escape this? This is what we know what you're up to. We know that you don't give a damn. We know that Benjamin Netanyahu would burn the Israeli people and leave the Jewish community around the world exposed for his crimes. You two are criminals, Donald. And what you've done now, you think you're going to get through in the midterms by shutting it all down when the price of gas is going through the roof, when we see absolute chaos. And you are going to need friends, Donald. At some point, you need allies, and you've got none. What are you going to do? Call Belarus? What are you going to do? Call the right-wing dictator in Argentina and get him to come and send ships to back you up? You put your troops at risk. You put your people at risk. You put the world at risk. And it's because you are a predator, and everybody knows it, Donald. So in Canada, yeah, we're getting our drones. In Canada, we will continue to fight for democracy. And in Canada, we will meet with allies around the world, people that we respect, people who treat people with dignity, people who believe in the rule of law. And you don't believe in any of that, Donald, because you have lived off dirty Russian money, and you've lived off dirty, rotten crimes for your entire life. And you're trying to take the world down so that you can stay ahead of those crimes. They're coming, Donald. They're coming. Going to get you one day. We'll watch.
Charlie Angus leads Meidas Canada, everybody. Make sure you subscribe to Meidas Canada. Thanks, Charlie.
Thanks so much.
Everybody hit subscribe. Let's get to 7 million subscribers.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.